Hi there. Welcome to the Raven's Call. I'm Eric, Wordweaver Sjerven, Gothi of the Ridgar folk here in East Texas, and I'd like to welcome you to the program. This is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, just kind of whatever strikes my fancy, sets my mind on fire at the time. Big UPG warning at the beginning of the episode, like always. This is just my views. My videos are meant to be conversation starters, maybe encourage you to think outside the box on a few things, encourage some just different ways of thinking about things, maybe exploring some different avenues. Just kind of take it with a grain of salt and develop your own views and culture. That's what it's all about. So all my contact information is down below. You guys know where all that is. P.O. Box, email, all that. I do pay attention to emails. I do pay attention to, I don't always get to reply to emails, but I do pay attention to them. I read them. And I reply to them when I get a chance, but I do read them. And then my comments in the Facebook group and the comments on the videos, I get a lot of really good show ideas from those. And so I'm going to continue doing that as long as I can. 2021 is going to be a weird year. So we'll see where things go. I've already missed more episodes, I think, this year than I have in the entire run of the series. So it's been dodgy, but we're persevering. It's what we do. So I do intend to do some more project kind of things. Not really to a point yet where things have stabilized such that I can pay attention to that. Plus I need a few more supplies to be able to turn things out the way that I want to. So stay tuned, those will come at some point. I'm working on it. So, because I really want to get back on my lathe and try and turn some really cool stuff. It's a work in progress. There's a few supplies that I have to get, and money's the thing, as you all know. So anyway, on to today's subject. Now, today's subject is a write-in request from a viewer, Tyler Hill, who wrote in and asked me what my take on animism was and how that impacted heathenry as a worldview and culture and just philosophy in general. Now, animism is a thing that... Animism by its name is a specific view. It's a specific approach to things, and it is an element of philosophy. So to try and transpose animism in its entirety as a philosophy onto any particular culture is going to be an imperfect fit. So if you broaden that a little bit and look at just some of the general ideas behind animism and the way that it works, then you begin to see how it fits into certain cultures and how they work alongside that or incorporate those general ideas in that culture. And animism, just kind of an animism 101, animism, blah, 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 is kind of the view that there are animating spiritual forces to natural elements and entities that give life to and give spirit to these entities, or these objects, that not just like living, breathing things, but also the rocks, the seas, the rivers, the mountains, things like that. You can already tell where I'm going with this, so props to you. So animism as a whole is the view that everything, or at least a lot of things, have spirit. It can be everything has spirit, it can be a lot of things have spirit, but it is the idea that spirit is outside of just humanity. And just from a personal viewpoint, I've always thought that the idea that humans were the only ones to possess soul or spirit was a bit selfish, a bit self-centered, a bit arrogant in its approach. And the idea behind that is that there are, interacting with animals, anybody that's done any kind of rescue work, that's done any serious work with animals, with livestock, with anything, can tell you these animals have spirits. They have sentience in their own way. It may not necessarily be manifested in the same way as humanity, but it is its own form of sentience, its own form of life, its own form of spirit. And so if you look back into heathenry, you begin to see that, yes, indeed, those elements of animism are very much there. When we talk about the Vetir, when we talk about the spirits of the land, that's exactly what we're talking about, those animating spirits that are outside of humanity. Now, You guys, if you've watched my soul videos, you know that I ascribe to a very complex view of the human soul, one of those being the Fera. The Fera is the ancient tree spirit, the Vatir spirit of what makes us human that ties to the natural world around us. It's the element of spirit that comes from the land and from Midgard itself. The other elements of the soul can come from different areas, some from the ancestral side of things, some from the divine side, when you get down to the Odr, that divine madness, that breath of life from Odin. When you get into the Fera, you're looking at that natural spirit. And I've done videos on the Fera specifically before. This one's just specifically looking at the animistic side of things because it was a request. And that Fera spirit is that tieback. It is that natural land spirit element that is a piece of us. It doesn't make us land spirits, but it means we've got a piece of that in us. Just like when you look back at your DNA, you've got stuff from all throughout your history. Everything that goes together into making you has left its thumbprint there, its mark. And so a certain element of what has gone into making us, like if you're going to sit down and build a building out of the natural elements around you, it is going to be from the dirt and stone and everything that you have there, from the wood and from, you know, all of the materials that are there. Each of those pieces goes into it. So you can have a composite of things, and it's not any one thing. Like a building that's made from a mixture of sod and stone and wood can be an incredibly strong building, but it's no one thing. It is an element of all of those things, and that's what we're getting when we're dealing with the Fera spirit element of the soul complex. We are a complex composite of all of these soul elements put into one, which is why we only exist as we are here and now, in the here and now. Going back to the life-affirming element of heathenry, that this is the here and now, this is life, because this is the only time that we are completely all of us as we are now. Even when we go to sit with the ancestors, that's only a portion of the soul that goes back to the ancestors. The Fera spirit goes back into the land. That little bit of divinity that's given to us by the gods returns to the gods. That's all cyclic in nature, which is a recurring theme that you'll find within heathenry and a number of other religions. The idea here is that along with Newtonian physics and everything, you know, nothing can be created or destroyed. It simply cycles. That is similar in what we're doing here. The spiritual energy changes shape, changes form, changes composition, but it's still there. It is still what it is. And so all of it is molded together into what is us, and then when we die, we break down and we go into those different parts. So that's tying back to the Fera and the whole soul complex element as it was. When we're dealing with the spirits of the land, when we're dealing with the generalized animistic element of things, yeah, animism does indeed apply on some levels to heathenry. Interestingly enough, when you're dealing with the Vatir, you're dealing with, and I've done entire breakdown videos on the Vatir with, you know, my view of hierarchy and everything like that, but I've got lower level Vatir, mid-level Vatir, and kind of alpha or high level Vatir, and it follows kind of a pack, naturalistic kind of pack dynamic, as opposed to more humanoid approaches to things such as tribe or established culture. It's more law of nature versus law of man. And that is all entirely built upon the idea that animals and the world around us is full of spirit energy and full of spirits in different forms than what we may understand. A lot of Sjerven work is dealing with reading a lot of those kind of energy flows. Say more so on the side of weird, but there are some, I'm loath to say shamanic, because shamanic actually applies to a specific culture, but if you take it as a generalization of working with the spirit realm, then yes, it does. There was some evidence of spirit work within heathenry, at least Arch-Heathen times, from what we can tell. Stories of practitioners sending out their hammer, or their spirit body, and it changing shape and passing through the spirit world and exploring the world around us. I always found those particular stories interesting and very, very insightful in a lot of ways. So you're dealing with spirits all throughout the world. River spirits, mountain spirits, spirits of the land. Our Husvitir fall into that same element. They are the animating force of the house that we give we understand them in the terms of something like a tomte or a nissa, little gnome type creatures. That's simply a manifestation and a shape that we give them, that we see, and it's an agreed upon form of communication between us and them. My particular views on the spirit world is that it is ephemeral, it is less bound to shape than we are, because it is not of the material physical world, it is of the spirit world, which is more ephemeral, and therefore that's why you get the stories of shape changing with the hammer and things like that. It is more fluid in shape than in the material world that we deal with, which is why we are bound by physical shape. Now, in looking at the Vetir, we talk about the Husvetir, we talk about Landvetir. I've told stories before about my times running around the bottoms down in Tennessee Colony with my old chieftain, who we would go hunting down there a lot. And there was a very strong alpha spirit that lived down there that we called Fendraka, which basically is Old English for swamp dragon. And he was cool, but very, very primal and very, very other. And one of the things that I think when dealing with the animistic side of things is that people try to superimpose the idea of our kind of thought process onto these spiritual entities, and they don't realize that our culture and our way of doing things is completely alien to them. They expect these spirits to respond to us in the same way that another person would. When dealing with the ancestors, yes, it's completely understandable and agreeable to interact as you would with another human being, because you're dealing with an ancestral spirit with that commonality. You're dealing with the element that is tied to humanity. When dealing with the gods, through our ritual, we have our way of communicating. The gods are so great and above us and so grand in scope. They created us, ergo they can understand us. They wrote our programming, as it were. So we don't have to worry about that so much. But when we're dealing with the Vetir, when we're dealing with these animistic spirits, we have to meet them on their terms. We can't just expect them to be able to interact with us the way we would with other human beings. When you're dealing with wolf spirits, you need to be able to interact wolf spirit-like. And that is when you're dealing with natural things like that, when you're dealing with the raw primal world, it can be dodgy, it can be dangerous, because if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't meet them on their terms, they may take affront to what you do. If you don't meet a wolf spirit and show it the deference and interaction that another wolf spirit would, it may not understand you. It may not engage with you the way that you want to engage with it. It's a thing. It really is. And one of the things that I find interesting in watching other people try to do spirit work is that the ones that I see that are more effective with what they do take the time to understand the spirit that they're working with. They take the time to understand the wolf spirit, the raven spirit. They understand their manifestations in the material world. They understand the underlying nature of that spirit, the nature of that animal, and the way that it interacts. And they interact with it on those terms. And I find this to be far more effective from what I've seen and from my own experiences and my own explorations into spiritual work. Now, that's dealing with more animal spirits, which is, again, the animistic side of things. Getting to work with some of these more alien entities, like working with river spirits, working with mountain spirits, working with the alpha spirits of an area, that's more complex, and that is understanding the nature of what they do, the nature of their very being. Like a river spirit runs, a river spirit is motion, a river spirit is power, it is enduring, it is weathering, it is a constant flow, it is shapeless in a lot of ways, but still bound by current and bound by the world around it. They are not particularly fond of things that disrupt their flow or things that pollute what they do. So you have to, when interacting with those spirits, interact in a way that acknowledges and honors that. And I find that to be something that our ancestors did in offerings to local gods. That's when you're dealing with local gods, or gods with the little g. You're dealing with regional Vatir spirits that are like the god of the mountain, the god of the forest, the god of the swamp. Like Fendraka would be a god with a little g, god of the swamp. And he was the alpha of that area. And when you went into that area, you had to play by his rules, or else either A, your hunt would be very unsuccessful, B, the entire swamp would be unaccepting of your presence and your actions there, or you could be, if you did right, you'd be blessed in your hunt, you'd be welcome in that area. But one of the things that Fendraka was very particular about, that we got from feel and from work with that area, especially Mike, because he got to spend a lot of time in that area, was that Fendraka was not wild about firearms in that area. He was fine with archaic weapons, with more, like a bow was fine, spear was fine, knives were fine. It wasn't an issue with worked metal. He was not particularly fond of firearms. So we couldn't take sidearms, we couldn't take rifles into the areas that we hunted in there, and that was particularly dangerous because there are some things in the wilds of Texas that you really want to have a sidearm for, especially when you come across the bad side of one of our Texas hogs. It's kind of nice to have a sidearm there just in case things get dodgy. But nonetheless, we respected and were more accepted in that area. So, as we go forward and we start to look at these things and we look at things as they build in this, you begin to understand that animism is very much a part of heathen view. It doesn't mean that heathenry is animistic in its approach, but it does mean there are animistic elements to the culture. I specify that specifically because there are certain cultures that seem to be like purely animistic. Like the entirety of that culture is based upon the work with the spiritual, but heathenry is complex. Heathenry has multiple avenues, and exploring animism will help inform one aspect of it, but it doesn't cover the entirety of heathenry, because heathenry is religion, heathenry is culture, heathenry is spiritual. You hear me go through those main points very frequently. There's the spiritual side, which is working with the spirits around us, working with the Vatir, working with these animistic elements. You've got the religious, which is specifically working with the divine. That is specifically working with the gods and goddesses in the divine plane, in the divine time and divine space. We are dealing with the cultural side of things, which is dealing with each other. And then also within the cultural, spiritual kind of continuum there, you're dealing with ancestral spirits, which does encompass a little bit of culture and a lot of spirit. And so in dealing with these things, we see that heathenry is very complex. It has a number of facets that if you over-focus on one or the other, you fail to get the fullness and richness of the culture that informs every element of it. You deal with just the gods, and then you lose some of the cultural side of things, some of the focus on tribe, the focus on the hearth, the focus on that communal aspect. If you overly focus on that, but then eschew the gods, then you fail to upkeep your end of the bargain in the reciprocal return with the gods, and it damages the luck of the tribe and the survivability of the tribe as a whole. But if you eschew the spiritual side of things, the animistic side of things, then you're either not feeding your connection with your ancestors and suffering in the luck there, or you're not keeping a relationship in some way, shape, form, or fashion with the Vatir of the area around you, and you may be making things more difficult for yourself than need be in the home front. Gardens may not turn the way that you want to. Your hunt may not turn the way that you want to. Fishing may not produce the way that you want it to. If you go in and clear-cut an area without respect for the Vatir in the area, you may end up being unwelcome in the land ultimately. Again, with the alien nature of the spirits, they have no bonds with us until we start to forge bonds with them. And those bonds will look different based on which spirits you're interacting with, the region, who you are, how you interact, and the kind of relationship that you build with them. That's why land taking is such a big thing. The land taking ceremony, when you establish ownership and stewardship of a land, you are stepping in and you are driving out the wild Vatir, as it were. You are establishing a boundary and saying, this is my spot. You had everything outside the yard. This is my spot. So I'm going to set up, I am going to establish stewardship, and I'm going to take care of this. Those that work with me will be welcome here. Those that are not working with me, those that are going to be antagonistic to what I'm doing here, you need to go away. And when you do that, when you establish that stewardship of the land, you are extending the reach of your husvitir out into the bounds of your yard. And I've said this before on the channel, it's kind of reiterative, but still, nonetheless. The husvitir is not just bound to the house. The husvitir, while being the spirit of the hearth, the spirit of the house, also extends to all of the worked property that is associated with that land. In a lot of ways, your husvitir is your homestead vitir. And because in Arch-Heathen times, it was all homesteading. When you set up, you weren't renting, you weren't, setting up temporary placement. You were establishing a home, and there were multi-generational families on these farms, on these lands. It was odal land. It was passed down, and it was kept within the family. And that stewardship that was established and maintained and taken care of kept a constant control within a group that was focused on the care of the land. And so those multi-generational family lands were very, very strong because those families spent multi-generations focusing on that relationship and establishing that relationship with the Vatir and helping to maintain the land. Made for a very strong relationship. And did it always pan out? No. I mean, things happen. Crops go bad. Sometimes the spirits are just not there for you. Sometimes you may have offended a spirit. Sometimes there's a change in the spiritual hierarchy of things and stuff around you shifts. If you take that animistic idea and you broaden it across Midgard and across the earth, because if you've followed the channel, you know I established that Midgard is everything within our material plane. That includes the planets, the asteroids, the stars, all of that. All of this is Midgard to me, not just the earth. So if you expand that out and you start to look at the influence of spiritual entities on different areas, you can see a shift from a lush forested area into a desert. Desertification is a thing. And you can see the expansion of glacial spirits into different areas. Shifts into ice ages can be a significant shift between the influential parties when it comes to Vatir. And the Vatir, the Arctic North, will push down and claim more of the land in the process. And then those that are in the warmer climate will then shift down as well, or find a way to work within that new paradigm that has been established in their area. Those are the spirits that will endure in that area and change as a result, and then begin to, find their place. Again, when dealing with this, you can look at, entire continent shifts. You've got spiritual entities that are at play anytime, you have like Pangea. When Pangea broke apart into the continents that we know now, that was a major disruption. And you're talking about a division. That was like a God-level disruption of the earth. And that caused a lot of change for the spirits here. And when you ask about, the influence of major, because animism does, of course, also include major natural occurrences, things like tidal waves and hurricanes and tornadoes and things like that. Yes, I very much believe that there are spirits tied to that. As a matter of fact, I attribute those heavily to the destructive ones, to the presence of Jotun on Midgard and how that has played out. Hurricanes walking across, I will frequently attribute to Jotun, and I mention those a lot because I live in Texas near the coast, and we get hurricanes. Not as much up where I'm at. We get more tornadoes up here than anything, and I have had firsthand experience with that, which you can go back and watch my Storm Rider video in my Weaving Word stuff and see the story of that one. But we have, firsthand experience there, and I can tell you that watching that Jotun walk across and just do what it did, I was very thankful for Thor battling it that day, because that's very much what I believe got us through that. So, yes, to answer your question, Tyler, I do very much believe that heathenry encompasses animistic elements and that that is a real part, a very strong part of heathenry. And it is one piece of the giant puzzle that is heathenry. So I would not go so far as to say that heathenry is animistic, but I would say that animism as a philosophy and a worldview is a part of the grand heathen worldview, which is why I will use the term worldview frequently. I know there's a lot of drama on the internet about everything, and so I get a lot of people that are like, you know, don't like the fact that I use the worldview word. I don't care. It is a worldview. It's how you view the world around you. That is culture, that is philosophy, that is all of that rolled up into a worldview. And so, sorry, it's the applicable word. And then, of course, I know I get a lot of flack sometimes for people because they say, you know, he's got Theodish adjacent beliefs. I'm not Theodish. I have no problem with Theids. I don't. I have no issue whatsoever with the Theids. All of the ones that I've interacted with have been cool with me. Admittedly, that's only been a few, and with Theism, they all have a common root. So it's complicated as to whether you call them separate Theids or all part of the same big mega Theid. I don't know. I'm not Theidish. I'm not going to speak for them, but I have known some separate groups that are Theidish, and they have been fantastic with me. I've had a lot of positive interactions with them, and my previous chieftain was Theidish. At least he went the Theidish route over time, but my views are very much my own. I do not ascribe to any one particular preset when it comes to heathenry. This is my views as I have established with research, experience, insight. So I have some stuff in common with Theids. I don't care. That's fine. Not a problem with me. My focus is very tribal. It's very natural, very kind of heathen holistic, if that's a thing. Hashtag holistic heathen. Sure, why not? Haven't done a hashtag in a while. Let's go with it. So anyway, hopefully that answers your question, Tyler. I know that was a big kind of random ramble. Part of that is because this does cover a lot of area that I've covered before in separate videos, but maybe not amalgamated in this particular way. I've touched on it from a number of different areas as I've covered different aspects of working with the Vatir, working with spirit, things like that. So in essence, to sum things up, the question was, how does animism impact heathenry as a worldview and philosophy? There you have it. It's very much a part of the puzzle. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this. I will be back with something hopefully next week. Fingers crossed. We shall see how things play out. And I appreciate all your patience. I appreciate all your support. You guys are fantastic. And I'm gaining new followers all the time. Crazily enough, my Heathenry 101 video is nudging ever so close to 10,000 views. Never would have imagined that. Holy crap. It's crazy. Of course, when you put a clickbaity title on it like Heathenry 101, yeah, that makes sense. I just so wish that it had been of the quality of these videos instead of that janky setup that I had before. But at 10,000 views, it's kind of like, I could do a Heathenry 102, but I mean, that's pretty much the entirety of my channel. So it gets redundant at that point. It's meant to be kind of an intro thing and then on into the rest of the content. I just wish it was more reflective of the rest of the content. Anyway, I'm rambling. Hail to you all. Thank you. May your hearth fires burn bright. All right, let's get this rolling. Obligatory pre-show preening. Had my hair back in a ponytail all morning. All right. Oh, oofda. Oofda. My favorite word. Love oofda. Oofda is so much fun. So, yes, no news on D&D yet because we haven't had a chance to have a session. But we're hoping to have one here in the next couple of weeks. Maybe this weekend. Hard to say yet. Man, that road noise. It's crazy. So, I will give an update once that happens. But I'm excited about it because they're going through my dungeon, and that's a big long slog. So maybe one of these days I'll sit down and share some of the story that they've been going through because I'm quite proud of it. It's been fun. It's a really good story, I think, personally. but I'm kind of invested and kind of partial. So, but my players seem to be having fun, and that's the most important part. So, all right, guys. Other than that, update seems to be pretty much the norm. We're rocking along, and things haven't shifted for me employment-wise yet, but that's going to happen here probably in the next couple of weeks. So that may seriously shift how I do some things with regards to the channel. We'll see. Fingers crossed that it won't be too much of a hiccup, but I'll probably have to change my filming location. So much fun. But anyway, I'm not going to go big and long on the cutting room floor stuff today because I'm working with a kind of truncated time schedule. Although I did get one of my comments recently was somebody jumping in there and saying, "Hey, this is, I love the cutting room floor. It's like one of her favorite parts." I was like, "Oh, that's so cool. I appreciate that." That's, it's a fun thing that I just leave in. It's kind of my Jay Leno monologue, kind of dating myself with that. But anyway, most of you will get that though, judging by the demographics on my viewership, because I don't get a whole lot of Gen Z or whatever the current gen is. I get some. I get them all across the board. It's kind of neat. I love looking at that. So it's really cool to see the kind of cross section of the world that I get. So I really enjoy it. Anyway, so oh man, I got one of my comments here not too long ago was kind of frustrating. try to turn just a generalized post into something political. Guys, I do not get political on my channel. I'm not going to. That's one of the things that I'm very adamant about, is I don't mention politics on my channel or my particular views, because they're not going to be the same as everybody's, and that's not why you're here. So, those that make it this far in the video, keep politics out of the comments, please. That's not what that venue is for. That's not what the channel's for. I don't enjoy it. You guys don't enjoy it. Well, some do. But anyway, the gist is there's a reason I don't go into politics. I am a proud Texan. Love my Texas. And, there's ups and downs. But hey, so is everywhere. But anyway, we'll leave that one there. So onwards and upwards. Let's go ahead and kick off today's episode. Hair is just not agreeing with me. Cannot stand that. All right. Sorry, hair is being stupid. So anyway, we're live in 3, 2, 1. Let's jam.